The victims and survivors of the infamous killing fields of Cambodia are finally having their day in court. A United Nations-backed tribunal is underway this week, with several of the leaders responsible for the deaths of millions finally facing justice. When the Vietnam War ended in 1975, a new regime took control of Cambodia. They evacuated cities, banned modern technology, and killed anybody with an education or who was seen as a potential threat to their plans. During that reign of terror from about 1975 through 1979, an estimated 1.7 million Cambodians were killed. The regime's top leader, Pol Pot, died in 1998, but his top lieutenants now face trial in Phnom Penh. That's where it's going on. Several people from the Bay Area helped to push to get that tribunal. Pamela Merchant is the executive director of the Center for Justice and Accountability. She joins me tonight, as well as Kelvin So. He was also a person who was in one of the camps, so to speak, and you had a brother who was killed. So we're going to talk to you both about that, and I thank you both for coming by tonight. Pamela, I guess I want to start with you. Opening arguments have already begun in this trial. Your organization played a significant part in getting this, bringing this about. You actually have an attorney involved in the tribunal, correct?
Yes. Thank you very much
for
inviting us to this. We are representing 45 civil parties in this is the second Khmer Rouge trial, and we aren't actually the prosecutors. We're representing victims, and we're assisting the prosecutors. So the case is it's a significant case that spans many years and millions of deaths. And
why did it take so long to get the tribunal going? It's more than 30 years.
As with many historic crimes, it takes a long time for the political will in the country. This tribunal is backed in part by the UN. The Cambodian government approached the UN to set up this hybrid court. Unusual because there's an international prosecutor and a domestic prosecutor matched, international and domestic judges. The long-term goal of this tribunal is to leave a functioning court system in place. And it's also been very frustrating for the survivors, frankly.
Oh, I can only imagine. And I want to turn to Kelvin now to share a little bit of your story, because you lost a brother, and we should point out that the regime, as we mentioned, came in and kind of herded people out and forced them into camps, so to speak. The conditions were terrible. Millions of people died. And I wanted to know if you could share, because you ended up in some of the camps too, right?
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about what you saw and what happened so that people can understand what was taking place at that time.
Well, at the time when in 1975, when the Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia and with the entire city of Phnom Penh, and then they evacuated everybody out of the city. They said that the U.S. will bomb the city, and then my brother and his family, myself, my family, and my uncle, we just went to the outside of the city, and they told us that it will take only 3 days, and then you should be back.
How long were you gone?
Until the Vietnamese invasion in 1979.
So more than 4 years later.
Yes,
and the conditions in those camps were terrible.
Well, actually, we didn't go to the concentration camp, but they asked us to move from village to village, and then, like in my family, we end up in the province next to the Vietnam border.
I think we have some pictures of your family. Is this your family pictures here?
Yes, that's me, my wife, and my 2 daughters.
So what eventually happened to your brother? Now, I understand, was he a surgeon? Is that correct?
Yes, he was a surgeon.
And what happened to him? What became of him?
He's the time when he separated from me, and he's just went with his wife and the daughter. The son. And I never heard about him until his wife came to the U.S. And she told us that he was taken away by the Khmer Rouge. I never saw him back.
So what does it mean now, Pamela, to be able to have this? And thank you for sharing your story. We appreciate it. And I know it's difficult. Yes. It's an important story so people can remember and don't forget, and they know what happened. Tell me a little bit about how important it is to have this. I know it's taken 30 years, and I know the ramifications of having a justice system there. But for some of these victims and people who suffered and lost tremendously, what does it mean to them to be able to finally have this day in court and tell their story?
I think the most important thing is that there's justice, as you've just explained, between 1.7 and 2 million people were killed by the Khmer Rouge in just 3.5 years. The fact that this was done without impunity, that these leaders have not been held to account, is deeply, deeply troubling, not only to Cambodians in Cambodia, but to the diaspora and to our whole broader community. So the most important thing is that there's an accounting, that the truth is told about this, and then the other component about this is it can be for some people part of a healing process. Participating in these courts can give some relief, help you take back part of your life.
What do you think will ultimately come out of these trials? Some of the people that are now on trial are in their 80s.
Right.
This trial could go on maybe a year.
Right.
In some cases, they don't even know if they'll last the length of the trial, although that's speculation. But the point is, what would you like to see come of this at this point, and what do you think will happen?
Well, in the first Khmer Rouge trial, Duke, who was the head of the notorious prison where 15,000 people were killed, he was sentenced to 35 years in prison. That sentence was reduced partly for time served, but that was a very important moment. It was the first person to be held accountable for all the things that happened under this regime. We expect that these defendants will be sentenced to significant sentences. The 30,000 survivors participated in the last trial, went and watched it, saw what happened. The numbers are going to be much higher this time. This trial is being followed all over the world. And then there's a reparations process, and we're fairly active in trying to figure out a meaningful reparations scheme that will help keep the memory alive of so many people who are lost, like your brother. And
I know there are many nuances to the trial, and we haven't even gotten into that, but we appreciate you both for coming tonight, shedding a little bit of light on this, and Kelvin in particular to you for sharing. I know it's a difficult and painful story to tell, but we appreciate your strength in coming here tonight.
You're welcome. I'm very glad to have in person talk to you tonight, Brett.